Now, the ball is in the court of the terrorist organization Hamas. As from Israel's perspective, the agreement that the President of the United States presented at the White House on Monday is nothing less than excellent. United States President Donald Trump chose to present his 21-point outline at a dramatic press conference filled with historical declaration and descriptions, and immediately a chorus of endorsements came from European and also from Arab countries. Amongst them, massive pressure came against the Hamas terrorist organization to accept this proposal. This does raise hope, but in light of past experiences, the terrorist organization's answer is still a question mark. And at the same time, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sent a clear warning that if Hamas says they will accept the deal, but then do the opposite, Israel will finish the job. In any case, until we hear from the Hamas terrorist organization that they have accepted this deal, the IDF continues to hammer away at them, deploying forces deep into the heart of Gaza City, even as the residents who Hamas was counting on to serve as their human shields continue to evacuate the city. Having lost their human shields, the terrorists now have no choice but to go down inside the tunnels, trying to scrap together any achievements in the fighting and to shock the public. But the coming 24 to 48 hours will determine whether we reach a long-term agreement to end this fighting or not. In the northern arena, Hezbollah continues to insist that it will not disarm, and this week they were focused on celebrating the life of Hassan Nasrallah, their dear leader who was eliminated in an IDF airstrike last September, while Iran continues to support the Hezbollah terrorist organization and sees it as a defensive wall against Israel. And speaking of Iran, they're still stung by the humiliating defeat that they suffered in the 12-day war, and now they're telling Israel that they made a mistake in that war by being too merciful against us. But if another war starts, this time they are threatening that they will really bring down hell against Israel. European powers are warning Iran not to attack Israel, while the Americans seem to simply be shocked by the Ayatollah's foolishness, while here in Israel, we're simply doing what we have to do in order to be ready for whatever comes next. Welcome to Boots on the Ground. I'm your host Yair Pinto, bringing you all the truth about what is happening in Israel and inviting you to hit that subscribe button so that you remain tuned to the truth in real time. So in a joint press conference at the White House on Monday afternoon, President Trump presented the 21-point outline to end the fighting in the Gaza Strip and free the hostages, and announced that Israel agreed to a plan. But more than that, he also announced a new chapter in the Middle East. In his statement, he said that if Hamas does not agree to the proposal, he will support Israel in destroying the terrorist organization Hamas. And according to him, the hostages will be released immediately or within 72 hours, while Netanyahu thanked Trump and clarified that the plan achieves the goals of this war, Israel's goals: demilitarizing the Gaza Strip, returning the hostages, and ensuring Israel's security. As he was preparing to board his airplane back to Israel, Netanyahu told reporters that Israel will strongly oppose a Palestinian state. President Trump said he understands that. And regarding President Trump's plan, Netanyahu said the entire world, including the Arab and Muslim world, is pressuring Hamas to accept the conditions that we set and to release all of our hostages while the IDF remains in most of the Gaza Strip. Instead of Hamas isolating us, we turned the tables and isolated Hamas. And meanwhile, the fighting in the Gaza Strip continues as step by step the IDF deploys forces and continues dismantling Hamas on the ground. However, this is not without cost, as several soldiers were wounded in action in the last 24 hours. But Hamas has its back at the sea, as they have lost their last card in this war against Israel, and of course, I'm talking about the civilian population of Gaza City, who are refusing to be used as human shields or as tools for Hamas propaganda about starvation. What will Hamas do without its human shields to protect itself from the IDF? Let me know in the comments. We might be about to find out. So, In the north, the last month has seen Hezbollah launching a series of events marking the year since the elimination of their leader Hassan Nasrallah and of his relative Hassim Safi el-Din. Some of these commemorations have included events in the shores of Beirut. The projections and the mass rally near the tourist site stirred anger in Lebanon, where many people are fed up with Hezbollah and want to just go away. But of course, Iran continues to support Hezbollah and supply it because it's a pillar of its regional resistance project. So it is supplying it with weapons, funds, and making it clear that the organization constitutes a strategic defensive wall against Israel, while the Lebanese state remains weak and fails to enforce exclusive control of weapons inside its borders. And speaking of Iran, Britain, France, and Germany have warned the Islamic Republic against a possible attack on Israel after the reinstatement of the snapback sanctions. In a joint message, the powers called on Tehran to avoid escalation and return to a diplomatic path. So, of course, we know that this will work because apocalyptic death cults like the Ayatollah regime, which rules Iran, always listens to calls from secular Western democracies to be reasonable and pursue peaceful diplomatic solutions to every problem. I'm joking, of course. But in any case, we have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what's happening in Israel on day 725 of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region that are taking their orders from Iran's Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. So a moment before we begin, I want to call on you to keep spreading the truth, share, and follow us. And most importantly, don't forget to click on the subscribe button so that you remain tuned to the truth in real time and never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Before we get into the peace plan and the diplomacy of the release of the hostages and the neutralization of the Hamas terrorist organization that will bring the war to an end, I want to go over what happened on the ground in the Gaza Strip over the last 24 hours. So the IDF spokesperson's unit published an update last Thursday on the continued fighting in the Gaza Strip, especially in the southern Gaza Strip area, which is being carried out step by step with the goal of dismantling Hamas's capabilities. According to the announcement, the Brigade Combat Team Forces of the Etzion Brigade of the IDF have in recent weeks completed extensive operations in the Rafah area where dozens of terrorists were eliminated and several terror infrastructures were destroyed, above and also below the ground. Immediately after conducting the operations in Rafah, the southern city of the Gaza Strip, the forces moved to the Khan Yunis area, where two significant achievements were recorded, including the destruction of observation means and additional terrorist infrastructures, together with the elimination of dozens more of Hamas terrorists. Now, the brigade's forces are holding the southern Khan Yunis area with the aim of preserving the IDF's operational gains, deepening control in the area, and ensuring control over the Magen Oz route. One of the central axes in the fighting inside the southern strip of Gaza is the Magen Oz route. It is a corridor that is separating the Gaza Strip, preventing Hamas from move weapons and personnel from the north to the south. Meanwhile, intense fighting continues in Gaza City, as several IDF soldiers have been wounded in the last 24 hours. On Monday evening, the IDF announced that 5 more soldiers were seriously wounded in a battle that took place in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip when 5 terrorists infiltrated their defensive position and attacked with 2 explosives, attached them to a tank of Battalion 82. At the same time, there was another face-to-face encounter with small arms fire. The IDF is currently operating with 5 divisions inside the Gaza Strip. 3 of the divisions are currently conducting encirclement and maneuvering inside Gaza City. As of today, Hamas is with its backs to the wall, or more precisely, with its back to the sea. Hamas believes it could challenge the IDF at the tactical level in Gaza City. It knows that its war against the IDF is an asymmetrical war, and the firepower and the force by the IDF surpasses Hamas's power by a large margin. Therefore, Hamas tried to rely on confinement of about 1 million Gazans inside the city and its close surroundings. It also relied on operating as guerrillas within the civilian population and carried out actions of fire and launching mortar bombs and anti-tank missiles at the IDF forces alongside raids on parked forces. Hamas invested great efforts to prevent the civilian population from leaving the area. It also exploited the densely urban space and high-rise construction in Gaza City and in the Shati refugee camp to build, in its view, an effective defensive array against the IDF forces. And needless to say, Hamas assesses that the IDF would not actually enter Gaza City to carry out a true maneuver there, as it did in Rafah, in Khan Yunis, and in Bet Hanun. At the end of the day, the population was its most valuable asset to use against the IDF, because with the civilian population in place, Hamas could conduct a propaganda campaign based on false narratives about how Israel was starving the Palestinians. It could also score propaganda points by posting videos and photos of wounded Palestinian civilians saying they got hurt by the Israeli bombs, and the international media would take these claims at face value every single time. Above all, the civilian population of Gaza City made it easier for Hamas to attack the IDF, knowing that the IDF would hesitate to shoot back at them if they thought civilians might get hurt by accident. But now, most of the civilian population of Gaza City has voted with their feet, leaving Gaza City and letting Hamas fend for itself. The Shati camp in the north of Gaza City, which is Hamas's central line of defense, has been emptied of population. Within a week, about 200,000 people left the camp. From the whole Gaza City, more than 800,000 civilian Palestinians have already left south to humanitarian zones. Now, Hamas finds that its movement is limited, and it has been forced to go underground into the tunnels and trying to challenge the IDF with a showy action. It is trying to scrap together some achievement or other that will shake the public in Israel. So the coming 24 to 48 hours are crucial. Israel can now reach a long-term arrangement and dictate the end game of this fighting. Here, the maneuvering IDF forces are required to show sharpness and operational discipline in order not to allow Hamas to scrap a tactical achievement on the ground by kidnapping a soldier or harming our troops. This requires from the Israeli sides and the negotiators to examine the long-term moves. The Americans have put on the table an agreement that Israel can live with in peace and in security, and enormous pressure is being put on Hamas to accept this deal. And here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development regarding Hamas, and we invite you to be part of the team and continue to spread the truth, share, and of course, click on the subscribe button so that you will remain tuned to what's happening in Israel and know how to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Now, a moment before we go over all the details from Monday's historic White House press conference, I want to talk to you about how you can help Israel in a very practical way in a critical area. In this troubling time, one of the most powerful ways that you can help Israel is by buying blue and white. Blue and white is the colors of the Israeli flag. And buying blue and white means buying products that were made here in the land of Israel. So at Blessed by Israel, we bring you handcrafted, high-quality treasures straight from the biblical heartland of Judea and Samaria. From fragmented olive oil and golden honey to nourishing soaps, creamy tahini, and rich coffee blends, every item carries the legacy of families that are faithfully working this land, the land of Israel, the land that was promised to Abram. So when you purchase these gifts, you're not just shopping, you're blessing Israel's people, supporting small family businesses, and fulfilling the scripture, "I will bless those who bless you." And it's never been easier. With flexible subscription options at discounted rates, you can keep standing with Israel month after month. So, if you want to get your order today, make sure to visit blessedbyisrael.com/stand. Again, that's blessedbyisrael.com/stand. This is the way to support the people of Israel and get a piece of the Holy Land to your house. Now back to the news, and we're diving into all the details about the 21-point plan that President Donald Trump has presented for freeing Israel's remaining hostages and ending the war in the Gaza Strip. The agreement that President Trump has presented, and which has been enthusiastically endorsed by all the Arab governments, the Europeans, and even Turkish President Erdogan, is so good for Israel that we almost wonder if it's too good to be true. Now the question is, will Hamas accept it? Before we examine the possibilities, it's important to point out that, at least according to Trump's presentation, it is much more than agreement. It is the opening of a new chapter in the Middle East. Candidly, I think that's true. And once again, it seems so good for Israel that it's almost making me a little bit nervous, because there's always a downside, and I'm wondering if we've missed something here. But for now, let's take a look at what we do know and how we got here. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and United States President Donald Trump held a press conference at the White House following their meeting on Monday. The meeting lasted about 3 hours, and moments before the leaders entered the meeting, the American president projected optimism and told reporters that he is convinced there will be a deal with the murderous terrorist organization Hamas in Gaza. At the press conference, the first to speak was President Donald Trump, and here's a little bit of what he said. Bibi and I discussed how to end the war in the Gaza Strip, but only as part of a larger plan for peace across the Middle East. This is a historical day for peace in the Middle East. Then, Trump began referring to the 21-point plan, explaining the conditions for ending the fighting. According to the president, the prime minister agreed to the outline and accepted it, to which he added, if the outline is accepted by Hamas, this will lead to the release of all the hostages immediately, or maximum within 72 hours. I haven't dealt with Hamas yet, but the Arab countries will have to, and I think that they already have. I imagine they already spoke to them. They committed to demilitarize the Gaza Strip, dismantle Hamas's military wing, and the withdrawal of the IDF from Gaza. He then continued, Israel and the Arab countries knew why they turned to Trump. They knew that I could do it. After that, Trump spoke about the Prime Minister's opposition to the Palestinian state, especially after October 7th. And according to the president, in Israel, they're asking for two things: to bring back all the hostages and to end the war. Addressing Netanyahu, he said, "You are a hero and a fighter, but people want to move on with their lives. They want to see the light at the end of the tunnel." To this, he added, Israel withdrew from the Gaza Strip and they thought it would be peaceful, but the Gazans chose Hamas. The president also spoke about the investment made by Hamas to build a terrorist nest within the civilian population, such as in schools and hospitals, adding that if the Palestinians won't do the reforms, let them complain only to themselves. No nation has ever been a greater friend to Israel than me, said Trump, citing the Abraham Accords as an example, and also saying that I recognize Israel's internal capital, Jerusalem. I opened an embassy there. When I came into office, I said I would do it. And then many leaders told me no, but I did it anyway. I have never asked Israel to compromise its security. But Bibi and I have come a long way, and people in the Middle East want this. Many countries now respect Israel. You have won and earned your respect, and Israel is not going anywhere. Whoever makes peace with Israel will prosper. Afterwards, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke, turning to Trump and saying, "You are the best friend that Israel has ever had in the White House. You are about ending the war and starting peace. I support your plan to end this war in the Gaza Strip. We will ensure that Gaza will no longer be a threat to Israel. Under your leadership, we will take the next step to end the war and expand peace. He also clarified that Trump's plan achieves Israel's war objectives, primarily the return of the hostages, demilitarization of the Gaza Strip, and civil governments in Gaza that is neither controlled by Hamas nor the Palestinian Authority. And during the speech, the Prime Minister added that even after Hamas is disarmed, the IDF will remain in the perimeter for the foreseeable future. He went on to say that it will not surprise you that the majority in Israel does not believe in the Palestinian Authority. We do not expect a leopard to change its spots. But your plan for Gaza is good, and it may lead to peace with Israel. So we will never forget the atrocities of October 7th, but it taught our enemies an important lesson. Whoever attacks us will pay the price, and whoever goes with us will gain prosperity. That last line almost sounds like Genesis 12:3. And I'll let you go and look up in the Bible to see if you think that it's matching. But getting back to Netanyahu's speech, he also felt the need to address a phone call to the Emir of Qatar, in which he gave a highly qualified apology for the strike on Hamas leadership in Doha earlier this month. So regarding this incident, Netanyahu simply said Israel attacks terrorists, not Qatar, and then he thanked Trump for initiating the phone call. Netanyahu was asked whether he agreed to the establishment of a Palestinian state and replied, absolutely not. It is also not written in the agreement, but one thing we did say, we will firmly oppose a Palestinian state. President Trump said he understands this. As recalled, the White House unusually changed the original schedule and expanded it from a short meeting to a full-day agenda that included a mutual staff meeting, a joint lunch, and finally, a joint press conference of the two leaders. Such a change indicates an intention to present a significant announcement and the strength of the friendship and the relationship between the two leaders. Moving forward, principles for a broad regional agreement are expected to be finalized. This agreement will be based on three central foundations, which constitute Israel's war objectives, the immediate return of all the hostages, the full dismantling of Hamas's weapons and military capabilities, and an assurance that the Gaza Strip will no longer constitute a threat to Israel. These 3 points constitute a non-negotiable basis for the Israeli side, and most of the issues have already been agreed upon in advance. The agreement will also include other parties in this region, with Qatar, which is responsible for Hamas, expected this time to provide concrete guarantees for meeting the commitments. Additionally, this day is marking a significant progress towards expanding the Abraham Accords and normalization with additional Muslim countries. This is as part of a future arrangement in the Gaza Strip, a multinational force that will be established and will include Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Indonesia, and other countries which will operate in the area under the leadership of former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. And meanwhile, Prime Minister Netanyahu is perceived as the only leader capable of leading such a complex historical move and presenting it to the public in Israel. And speaking of presentations, the American government officially published a 21-point initiative to end the war in the Gaza Strip as the joint press conference at the White House was getting on its way. So here are the main points. The Gaza Strip will be a terror-free zone and will undergo de-radicalization so that it will not constitute a threat to its neighbors. The Strip will be redeveloped for the benefit of its residents who have suffered more than enough. If both sides agree to this proposal, the war will end immediately. IDF forces will withdraw to the agreed line to prepare for the release of the hostages. During this time, all military actions will be suspended, including air and artillery strikes, and the front lines will be frozen until the conditions are met for a gradual and full withdrawal. Within 72 hours of this agreement being publicly accepted by Israel, all the hostages, living and dead, will be returned to Israel. After the release of all the hostages, Israel will release 250 Palestinian convicted prisoners serving life sentences in Israeli jails, plus 1,700 Gazans that were arrested after October 7 of 2023, including all women and all children that were arrested in this context. For every fallen Israeli hostage that is returned, Israel will release the remains of 15 Gazans. After the return of all the hostages, Hamas members who commit to peaceful coexistence and to disarmament will receive amnesty. Operatives who wish to leave the Gaza Strip will receive safe passage to observing countries. And upon acceptance of this agreement, full aid will be sent immediately to the Gaza Strip. At minimum, the aid quantities will be consistent with what was included in the January 19, 2025 agreement regarding humanitarian aid, including the rehabilitation of infrastructure, water, electricity, sewage, restoration of hospitals and bakeries, and the introduction of necessary equipment for debris removal and road opening. The entry, distribution, and aid to the Gaza Strip will be carried out without interference by either side through the United Nations and its agencies and the Red Crescent, in addition to other international institutions that are in no way connected to either side. The opening of the Rafah crossing in both directions will be subject to the same mechanism implemented under January 19, 2025 agreement. Gaza will be administrated under the interim transitional role of Palestinian Technocratic Apolitical Committee responsible for opening daily public and municipality services for the people of the Gaza Strip. This committee will be composed of qualified Palestinians and international experts with oversight by a new international transitional body called the Council of Peace, which will be headed and led by President Donald Trump, with additional members and heads of state that be announced, including former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair. So this body will set the framework and handle the funding of Gaza's redevelopment until such a time as the Palestinian Authority completes its reform plan as described in various proposals, including President Trump's 2020 peace plan and the Saudi-French proposal, and can take back the control of Gaza securely and effectively. This body will be assisted by international best practices to create modern and efficient governments that serves the residents of the Gaza Strip and contributes to attracting investments. A Trump economic development plan for rebuilding and reviving Gaza will be created by convening a panel of experts who help give birth to some of the Middle East's thriving modern miracle cities. In-depth investment proposals and exciting development ideas have been formulated by well-intentioned international groups, and they will be considered in order to integrate the security and the government frameworks to attract and facilitate these investments that will create jobs, opportunities, and hope for Gaza's future. A special economic zone will be established with referential tariff rates and access to be negotiated with participating countries. So no one will be forced to leave the Gaza Strip, and anyone who wants to leave will be free to do so and free to return. We will encourage people to stay and then offer them the opportunity to build a better Gaza. Now, I have a few comments to make about all of this. The problem was and remains the Hamas terrorist organization, which in the last 2 years achieved unprecedented gains. Hamas's goal was not to reach a ceasefire. The first goal was to lead Israel to a diplomatic collapse. That goal was achieved. The additional goal is to move Israel from a diplomatic collapse to a diplomatic crash. And it is still not clear, despite the optimism, whether Hamas will give up the unconventional weapons that it has in its hands in Gaza. Hamas worked hard to use the population of the Gaza Strip as human shields and also as its bargaining chip. There was not and is not any genocide in the Gaza Strip. There was not and is not a starvation that's happening in Gaza. Again, no genocide, no starvation. But even if there are genocides and starvation, this is the last thing that bothers Hamas. They just do not care about the Palestinian people, because these campaigns are Hamas's success. So with the help of countless useful idiots throughout the Western world, these campaigns raise the level of hatred against Israel and are already breathing new life into the long dormant campaign to boycott, divest, and sanction Israel. These campaigns are the weapon that perhaps Hamas hopes will move Israel from collapse to crash. The more dead Palestinians and destroyed buildings in the Gaza Strip, the better it is for Hamas, because they know that the images of these things will cause millions of people around the world to rally to their cause, a terrorist organization. However, Israel has also achieved many things in this war, and if this plan that President Trump has put forward succeeds, the most important achievement will be the release of all the hostages, and hopefully that will happen soon. The question, of course, is whether Hamas will agree, but there are some very excellent reasons to believe that they will, starting with the fact that virtually the entire world is telling them that they should. This even includes some of their best friends in the Arab and Muslim world, including Qatar and Turkey. If they refuse, they have been told that the IDF will be given the green light to move in and finish them off, and no one will lift a finger to help them, except perhaps the Islamic Republic of Iran, which we'll talk about more in just a minute. But as far as I'm concerned, if the plan brings back all the hostages, it's good for Israel. In any case, Netanyahu had no choice but to accept the plan, and for all indications, he was even able to get President Trump to make some changes that made it better for Israel's point of view. Now, the main challenge to this plan is likely to come from the right-wing parties in Israel's own government. Here, they are unhappy with some of the clauses of this plan, especially the commitment that Israel is being asked to make that will never annex Judea and Samaria. Candidly, I think that this is much ado about nothing, as time will pass and circumstances will change, and sooner or later, this commitment will become little more than a footnote in the history books. But in any case, if Netanyahu's right-wing coalition partners will bolt over this issue, the centrist parties in the opposition have already said that they will support him so that he can sign this agreement without the government collapsing. If that happens, it will probably mean that we will soon be going to new elections in Israel. And although I think we're not talking a lot about politics, domestic politics of Israel in this show, it's important to mention that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, and elections is a good thing. Now, getting back to the diplomacy, in Washington, they say that they are now waiting for the Qataris to bring Hamas's answers. If Hamas answers positively, it will require proximity talks to coordinate the release of the hostages and the IDF's positions. The Israeli negotiating team is reviewing the plan and is preparing, if necessary, to depart for Doha. In a video he posted on his X account overnight between Monday and Tuesday, Netanyahu declared that now the entire Muslim in our world is pressing Hamas to release all the hostages while the IDF is still in most parts of the Gaza Strip. Who would believe that? After all the time they said you must accept Hamas's terms and take everyone out. The IDF must go out and Hamas can recover and rehabilitate the Gaza Strip. But that's not happening. This is according to Prime Minister Netanyahu. And here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development on this matter. So keep spreading the truth, share and follow us. And most importantly, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you remain tuned to what's happening in Israel, boots on the ground style. Moving to the northern arena, in the past month, Hezbollah launched a series of events marking the year since the elimination of Hassan Nasrallah and his relative Qassem Safi al-Din, and is centering one of the prominent events on the shores of Beirut. The screenings and the mass demonstration near the tourist site sparked government anger and clashes with security forces, and also deepened the political situation in Lebanon. So the Alma Research and Education Center think tank in Israel summarizes the situation and writes that the official event, which opened with a series of activities announced in mid-September, reached its peak on September 25th, when images of Nasrallah and Safi el-Din were projected onto the Round Rock and political chants against the government were heard. Thousands of supporters arrived with flags and with pictures, and security forces deployed roadblocks in an attempt to prevent the situation from pouring fuel on the flames of internal tensions. At Alma, they believe that the entire crisis illustrates Hezbollah's determination to rehabilitate its image and to continue to establish itself as a center of the political and public stage inside Lebanon, even at the price of confrontation with the government. This is a cognitive victory for Hezbollah, which presents itself as unafraid to pressure the government and continues to dictate the agenda. They are effectively telling the government of Lebanon that they will not bow to pressure to disarm. They will not simply disappear, as so many in Lebanon and the wider region want them to. On that note, Hezbollah's Secretary General Naim Qassem announced on September 27 that we will not allow the dismantling of our weapons because we are in an existential confrontation. We went on to say that the Israel-American danger to Lebanon is an existential danger to the resistance and to Lebanon. He also said, Lebanon has fulfilled its commitments according to the Resolution 1701, and now Israel must fulfill its own. He also urged the Lebanese government to withdraw from its decision on the exclusivity of weapons in the hands of the state. Hezbollah has recovered in jihad terms, and today it is ready for any future confrontation. So if you ask me, it sounds like Naim Qassem has been spending too much with Iranian leaders who have made the mistake of believing their own absurd lies and propaganda. Hassan Nasrallah, for all his monstrous evil, never made that mistake. In any case, senior Israeli officials say that Iran, which lost on the international front in its efforts to cancel the reimposition of sanctions within the snapback mechanism, continues to support Hezbollah and strengthen it by transferring weapons and funds to Lebanon. And furthermore, Ali Larijani, the Secretary General of the National Security Council in Iran, arrived in Beirut this week to participate in the anniversary ceremony of Hassan Nasrallah's death. Senior security officials say that Larijani's visit to Beirut symbolizes the renewal of Iran's absolute support for Hezbollah as an armed terrorist organization and as a pillar of what it calls the resistance project, which further complicates the situation inside Lebanon and sends a clear message to the whole world that Hezbollah is not merely an internal Lebanese political component, but a strategic expansion of Tehran's regional policy. And as part of the visit, Larijani met with the Speaker of the Lebanese Parliament, Nabih Be'eri, and afterwards the Prime Minister, Nawaf Salam, who emphasized that proper relations between Lebanon and Iran should be based on mutual respect for each side's sovereignty and non-interference in internal affairs. It is obvious to everyone that Iran's support for Hezbollah does not stem from Lebanese interests, but from Iran's regional strategy, which places Hezbollah at the heart of its expansion project in this region. Hezbollah continues to thumb its nose at the Lebanese government and shows no signs that it is open to a possibility of negotiating its disarmament. And the Trump administration understands the situation well, and at present is not taking any steps against the Lebanese government. So it appears that Israel will continue to do the work itself and dismantle Hezbollah's weapons through aerial bombardments. So what do all of you think about this situation? Really, I'm curious to hear. Let me know what you think in the comments. Should Israel be worried about Hezbollah? You think there's going to be a civil war in Lebanon? Let me know what you think. In any case, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development on this subject. So keep spreading the truth and remember that Israel needs your help. Day by day, Israel attacked by waves of fake information, lies that are being spread and believed to be the truth about this situation. So how do you fight lies? you share the truth. So come on, share these videos, hit the like button, and make sure to hit the subscribe button so that we reach more people with what's happening here on the ground. And finally, here in Israel, we are preparing for the arrival of the pro-Palestinian Flotilla, which is made up of several small boats making their way towards the Gaza Strip under the leadership of Greta Thunberg and other activists. According to a report published on Monday by the Novara Media, this is a news agency, Turkey has joined Italy and Spain and sent its own warship, making it the third country to dispatch naval vessels to escort this flotilla. According to the report, this morning a Turkish Red Crescent ship evacuated passengers from one of the flotilla boats due to a leak. Journalists that are present reported that they noticed a new warship on the horizon, and soon the organizers confirmed that Turkish Navy had joined the Red Crescent's operation to transfer additional humanitarian aid. And later, the warship responded to the distress calls. In Israel's security establishment, they assessed that the flotilla will arrive around Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, and Shayetet 13 fighters conducted in recent days open sea boarding drills to prepare for the possibility of confrontation while minimizing harm to passengers. As of now, it is about 50 vessels, the largest flotilla that has tried to reach Gaza so far, accompanied by 2 warships from Greece and Italy and by Turkish UAVs. So, the IDF is preparing to take control of all ships that will arrive as part of the flotilla to the Gaza Strip and to prevent their arrival into Gaza, as Israel has in recent days conducted contacts with various actors in Europe and clarified that it is determined to prevent the vessels from entering the Gaza Strip. Israel offered to transfer the goods through Ashkelon by Israeli trucks into Gaza, but the organizers refused this idea. In the IDF, they understand that the ships of the Spanish and Italian navies escorting the boats do not intend to cross and enter Israel's territorial waters, and they do not intend to prevent the arrest of the boats at the entry into the Israeli territory. So a military source said the ships will escort and provide assistance if one of the boats on the way gets into distress on the high seas. They do not intend to enter into a confrontation with the Israeli Navy. And I want to conclude by calling out all those social activists that are invited by the Muslim Brotherhood and the Hamas terrorist organization, and also to countries like Turkey, Spain, Italy. We are praying for you that you will see the truth and understand who you are supporting and what. Therefore, I call on all of you, yes, you, back at home, pray for all these leaders, for all these activists, to see what's happening and who they should side with in the situation, how to help the Palestinian people. It's not by supporting a terrorist group, it's by supporting Israel and ending this war. Let's pray for our leaders to make the right decisions in this situation. Let's pray for this plan to succeed. Let's pray for the Middle East to have better days, days of peace. I want to talk about peaceful stuff here, not about this war. Let's pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.